Alright, welcome to another video, and in this video we'll be looking at normalization. Okay, very important. Of course, we're still working with the same database we've been working with before, Introduction to SQL, and I don't seem to have a reason to keep this expanded, so I'll just collapse it. But I know it's still active, right? So, based on what we learned in normalization, this is not a good way. Since we have this as the database type, we can decide to extract this into another table, right? We can decide to extract this into another table, and this will also give us a good knowledge of some of the things we'll be looking at. So we'll just have an outline. I'm thinking of bringing in the scratch pad, so let's bring in the scratch pad, and can adjust this way. Good. And then the scratch pad, I'll put outline. There's outline for today. We'll be looking at normalization. We'll look at the full CRUD operation. I've seen some already. I've seen create, I've seen read. Then we'll look at alter. Oh, it's good to list them out instead. So we'll see create again. Of course, we'll see create. Let's list them out. Create. Read, which is select. Okay. Read into bracket select as the keyword. Then we'll have alter. Then we'll have update. Just add 2 lines to that. Okay, so update. We have delete. Yeah, so we'll cover all of this in this video, but if it's getting too long, I just cut it off and then keep things simple. So let's take a look at this. Now, normalization is what will help us see some of these things, and that's why we created this way intentionally. So the first one is update. So to make this simple, remember this was the last query I had, and I said I'm not going to keep mine. So if you saved yours, you open this pgAdmin again, you click on query tool, and you click on the database first, then your query tool. A new query tool will be open to you. If you saved your work from the previous time, just click open. If you didn't and you still like to get some of the queries back, go to query history and you will see, let me expand this. So go to query history and you will see the queries you have written. So anyone that shows error will be highlighted in red, and anyone that is successful will be highlighted in will just be white this way. So when you see ash or gray, so that you know where you're selecting. You see the ones that ran into error, this is the way they'll highlight. Now when you click on a particular one, for example, do not make the mistake, this is a common mistake, of clicking copy to query editor. Let me show you why. Let me just copy this, Ctrl C, so that I have it copied. Now if I click on copy to query editor, what it does is that it clears out everything I have before. It clears out what? Everything I have before, and that is not what I want it to do. I probably want it to do something like this. You keep the one I have before, then add that to the bottom. But sadly, it doesn't work that way. So when you go to query tool, do not click on copy to query editor. Rather, you click on copy. So first of all, let me paste what we have before, right? So if I come here, I won't click on copy to query editor, I'll just click on copy. Then it's copied. I can come here now and paste myself. Yeah, well, does that mean I have to do it one by one if I want to copy multiple? Yes, you have to do it one by one to copy everything. Okay. So keep that in mind. That's something very important. So you can go to history and copy some queries that are very important or very essential to you. All right. So for me, I don't want this. You can keep yours. I don't want this as well. So I'll only keep this guy. And of course, let's bring in our view. Now, I don't want to keep the scratch pad, but I still want something like a side note. If I put it here directly, let's say at the top, for example, it will throw an error. It will keep throwing an error, right? These things will run into an error. Outline, saying what is outline? It doesn't understand all of this. Okay, of course I can escape it by just coming here and running this one directly, but somehow this is showing as queries, which is wrong, and I don't want that. I'll close the scratch pad. So what can I do? I can comment it out. What is a comment? A comment is basically a side note that you had. Is silent. It doesn't execute. It's just there. It's just like a label. This, so that you can know what this is doing. So that you can know what this is. Right? That is why it is there. So how do you comment? You use double hyphen. Okay. So I can highlight everything. I can highlight everything this way and do a control /. So control / is one command. If you're control should work on Mac as well, or command is one useful shortcut that can help you comment things regardless of the tool you're using. This also works if I'm using let's say VS Code. I'm writing some basic query. I'm using Atom. I'm using different various code editor out there. They work just fine. However, if I want to put a comment in front of this, that this should tell me that okay, this is how I read data from the SQL basics, I'll have to type it myself, because if I do control /, it comments my main query. But I don't want that, so I'll just do this and say reads data from SQL basics table. Oops. SQL basics table in the intro to SQL database. Intro to SQL database. Right, that's a long one anyway. Alright. Now, since this is a multiple line comment, right, I will undo it. I highlight again, control /, it removes the comment. And how do I do a multiple line comment? I will do a /, then an asterisk. So anything that goes between anything that goes between the asterisk and the / is a comment. You can see now this is better, right? So I can have this as my list. So since we're not using the scratch pad, this can be on a straight line. Okay, so this is what we want to cover. This is what we want to cover. Okay, so this, I'll take this out just to show you. Comment is too long. Comments are useful when you have big chunks of code and you just want to remember what the logic is doing. Okay, doesn't mean you must comment every line. That's not a good way to do it. So the first one we want to do is update this particular table. So number 3 should be a particular database and it should be relational. So which database can we add that is relational? We already have SQL Server, Oracle DB, SQLite. Of course, we still have quite a number of them, but this will be MySQL since we don't have MySQL at all. So how do we update? Very simple. Now come down. Okay. Do update. What is your table name? The table you want to update, not the database. Database is introduction to SQL, but the table name is what? SQL basics. So SQL basics. Then I use the keyword set. Set DB to single quotes my SQL. Not forget I can break this into multiple lines. Okay, and then I'll put this and say set. Alright, so say where ID equals to 3. Of course, this can be on a single line. I break it down so that you see what is going on. Okay, I can do this as well, but it's okay the way it is. So update the table name, set this column, database column, to MySQL where ID equals 3. Now put my semicolon. If I did not put where ID equals 3 and I stop it here, what's going to happen is that my entire column will become MySQL for this column. All the values will change to MySQL, and we don't want that. Okay, so be careful when you're doing an update or a delete. Okay, so if I run this now, successful. If I go back and run this again, now we have it. Of course, by default, when you update a record, it is the same way as if you just inserted a new record. It goes to the bottom. And you can see it's here 3 MySQL relational. Okay, nice. That's what we have on the MySQL database. So, like I said, let's consider what we learned from normalization. We are not supposed to have this database there, so it can have its own table. Okay, it should have its own table. All right. So in less than a minute, I'll give you time to create a table, a new table inside our existing database, and you title it DB type. You title it what? DB type, and then it should have an ID and the type. So pause this video in less than a minute, for the next maybe 1 minute, or 3 minutes, and carry out the exercise. Go ahead, pause. Okay. If you've paused it, if you have done it, that's good. I'm about to reveal the solution. If you have not and you want to give it a shot, now is your time. If you want us to do it together, you want to watch me do it, then let's do it together. So how do I do it? Create table. We'll call it DB type. DB type. Open this. Close it. Then you come between the parentheses, right? Come between the parentheses and open it up. So whatever it is we have will go inside the parentheses. So we'll say ID, and the ID will be SA should be integer as well. Can be integer, it can be varchar. Let's use a variable character this time, or as a character. So we use another data type. I'll just call it 5. Maximum character should be 5. Okay, and the type itself will be varchar 50. No, 20 is good. Don't forget the last one does not take a comma. So this is what we have. Create table, DB type, ID is varchar 5, type is varchar 20. So run this. Successful. If you care to check from this place, expand up database, go all the way to schemas, adjust this. You can see it's still showing 1 as part of our table, right? Even though we have 2. Oops, hold on. Still showing 1. So what do we do? Right click on it and refresh, and it's now showing 2. So we can see DB, right? Now we can see DB. Good. So how do we check it from here? We'll say select asterisk from DB. DB type, that's our database name. And we'll execute that, and now we can see what? ID and the type. All right, quick one. Let's quickly talk about the way we write, the syntax. or the way the syntax is, and the color codes. Now, for every color code, for everything you type, the color codes are highlighted differently. Okay. Now, create table. These are seen any color in this, any color that takes the same keyword color. Okay. So if you have a keyword that is taking the same color as your create table, or as your insert, or as your select, that shows that they are keywords. Why am I saying the color of your keywords of your create, insert, or select? That's because you might be using a different version and the colors might slightly differ. But usually you're supposed to get a purple. I believe this is a purple. Okay, so you should see a purple and every keyword will follow that same thing. Now, for your ID or for your column name, they also take a blue type, the same as your table name. But you say, no, this is not taking the same as this. The reason that is different is because these are also keywords, even though they are acting as column name. For example, if I add something else now, you see it changes to blue. If I add something else, it changes to blue. So, but because those words are somehow reserved words in pgAdmin, even though it still let us use them, it is showing that way. If we go to our query history and we look for our create, okay, so we look for our create and we'll copy this, copy, I just paste it here. Oh, okay, everything is we use things that are close to a keyword. Okay, that's fine. If I were to add another column and say let's say new column, you can see it will take a blue type. Okay, so it will take a blue type. So that means whatever we type in as our text will take this type, blue. Keywords take purple. Let me remove the space, can cause problem. And the data type takes this brown color. Okay, so that's how you tell them apart from each other. So if we have a constraint, undo primary key, for example, because that is a keyword, you will see it takes what? Purple as well. Or default, you'll see it takes the purple as well. That's something to note. The second thing to note is it okay? Can we type everything in lowercase, or it has to be this way? Keywords capital and then others lowercase. Everything can be in lowercase. Literally everything. Okay. And you can also type it in uppercase. But by good practice, right? Good practice standard is good to type the keywords in uppercase, then other things, for example, maybe your column name or your table name in lowercase, and maybe your data type also in uppercase. So you just tell things differently from one another. Okay, it's a good practice. However, you can write in all lowercase and it works just fine. Now that we have that done, the next thing we probably want to do is rename this table, right? Because this table is showing SQL basics, but based on what we have in there, let's run it again. Based on what we have in there, this is not really maybe showing something like SQL basics, so it's showing things about databases, right? So we might want to rename from SQL basics to databases or DBs as the table name. All right, so how do we do that? Now we have seen update. Remember, this is how you update something. So come here and do update as well. So see, we have done updates. Let's break it down so we know what we have done, we know what we'll spend time on. Okay, so we've done this. in this video, because we'll still practice more, we'll do more with that, but in this particular one, this is what we've done. Update. Normalization is what we want to do next. In progress. And alter is what we're doing now. About. Okay. So quickly, in the database you created, that's the DB type, insert ID and the data type and the database type, just two, relational and non-relational. Now for the IDs, it should be, for relational, it should be RL01. Okay, RL01, can just write it this way. And for non-relational, it should be NRL002. NRL02. So this should be the ID for both of them. Then you just have relational and non-relational. So do that quickly, pause the video for a minute and get that done. Okay, if you have done that, well done. If you want us to do it together, this is how we do it. I'll keep that there. So I'll just say insert into DB type values, right? Yeah, values. The first one is a text. I probably want to type that in all lowercase RL. Or we can keep it in uppercase the way it is, 01. And this will be relational. Relational, comma, next one, we'll do NRL02, and this will be non-relational, non-relational. Now we'll put this, okay? So let me close this too. Okay, so this will be the two values in this particular database, and then we'll execute it. Alright, it says return successfully. I'll run select all again, then jumps to data outputs, and yes, I have this relational and non-relational. Good. So if we go back to this, I'll take out this update since we have already updated it. You can keep it, just go to the next line and write again. And create. I do not need this as well anymore. Okay, so I do not need this as well. However, you can keep yours for reference sake so you know how you did it. So if I run SQL basics now we need to take out this column or replace the values that we have in there. Okay, so the first thing will probably be, like I said, now we want to look at alter. Okay, we want to look at alter so that we can achieve our normalization. So this will just be IDs of the database type. So we want to look at alter, and the first thing we want to see about the alter, let me keep these two together, is, I'll keep them below, renaming a table. So I'll say alter table. What's our table name at the moment? SQL basics. SQL basics. And I'll say rename to. Okay, why is it looking different? Am I spelling rename wrongly? Okay, rename to DBs. So you can see that the table names are in blue. So alter, rename to DBs. And Now run that. It says successful. Now if I run this guy, it will throw an error. Boom, it says SQL Basics does not exist, but you're still seeing it here, but it's actually not there. If I right click and refresh, you can see it has now changed to DBs. So I'll have to change my query as well to DBs. Good. Now we have renamed that successfully and we're now seeing it as DBs. Okay. Alright. Now if this were to be MySQL, MySQL now takes the same. It should be the same for MySQL. But if you are using earlier version, you might have to do rename table. Then you say SQL Basics to DBs. It will be rename table SQL Basics to DB. If you are in SQL Server, you use the sp_rename. So it will look something like this. Alter, so exec, then you say sp_rename, then you have your first name, SQL Basics, comma, DBs, right? So this is for, oops, how did I get there? DBs. So this is, why is it, oh, page down. So this is for SQL Server. Is that a rename? If you're using BigQuery, if you're using a DBO, you might have to put the DBO dot, okay, DBO dot SQL Basics. And for BigQuery, the major difference will be you have a lot of dot notation. For example, the database name, the table name, the schema, then you just have all those dots, dot like that. So of course this is pgAdmin, and this is how we rename the table. Now the next thing we probably want to do, let's run selector from database type again. Okay, just this two. Then right here we have this. Okay, now we probably want to rename this as well to ID type or type ID. That means the database type ID. So it will be type ID. So I want to rename that, and this is renaming table. This will be renaming column, and to rename column it will be rename table, alter table basics, rename, then we'll say rename, what's the column? Type, the column is type, then we'll say rename to, that's rename type. Do not forget our column name is type. Rename type to type ID. Okay, type _ ID. So if I execute this, now it says SQL Basic does not exist here. See, I just forgot that we have renamed it. So I'll copy this. It's now DBS or DBs. Then I'll run this again. Successful. So if I run this again, that's the select all. It's now showing type ID. Now I want to empty what we have in there, or want to update what we have in there without deleting that column. Okay. How do we update what we have in there? Again, we'll go back to update, say update, and we'll say DBs, we're updating DBs, then set type ID with equal to the set type ID equal to RL01. Then we'll say where DB, that's the name, is equal to relational. So this time we're not using the ID. Why are we not using the ID? Because we want to update this. If we use the ID, we have to check for all the IDs, and that's a long thing to do. So just use the what? The type ID, the current type ID. So it is where type ID. So updating type ID to this where type ID before. Okay, where type ID is equal to relational. So we execute this. Alright, successful. Then we'll check, run this again. Now if we bring this up, so you can see all relational has now changed to what? RL01, RL01, the way we have it. Okay, let's bring that down. The next thing we want to do is update this as well. So you can do that, update non-relational to what? NRL, right? 02. So to do that, I'll just change this to NRL. Now change this to non-relational. And I'll run it. Successful as well. If we run, select from DB again. Successful as well. And you can see it. NRL, RL01. And they are now all updated. If, for example, you accidentally did this, your query will run without error, but you will not see the changes. Why? Because there is no database with non-relational. That is even before we changed it. Oh, and this is a mistake. This is supposed to be 02, not 01. 02. Why? If we check this, the database type, it is what? NRL02. So we have to change that. Now let me show you what I mean with this. So where NRL is this? I want to change it to 02. So let's say, for example, I change this to a lowercase accidentally, or I did something like this, NRL01. And I run this, says successful, but it says updated 0. Good. Let me run this again, DBs, to check if it updated or not. And you can see it's still 01. It did not change. Why? Because it is case sensitive, because we pass this thing in quotes when we're inserting the data, so it takes anything that goes in quotes literally. So I'll have to type it exactly the way it was before, capital R, capital L. And if I run this, Alt 5, you can see now it has updated 3. And if I run this again, Alt F5 I mean, and we check, oops, drag this up, you can see it's now NRL02. Good. Now I've been able to achieve normalization. Done. Of course, if you want to go for that to keep things as one NF, this is supposed to be a table on its own. Then this will be in another table where this is used. Okay. And we can still go for that to do that. But we'll have to, that means we need a third table name. And then we'll now see how to establish primary keys and foreign keys. We'll not be doing that in this video. We'll keep it for the next one. Okay, to spice things up. Alright, what other thing do we want to look at in this video? We want to look at I've seen this done, I've seen alter done, not completely, but we can now change, can rename column, rename table. Let's see how to change data type. So to change data type, say alter table, DBs, then alter column. What's the column? ID. With altering the type. What are we changing it to? to character of 5, for example, and then put a column. So let me show you what we want to alter before we alter it. Run DBs. Currently this is integer, so we want to change it to what? Character. So that's what we want to do. Now this is how I change. I just put this renaming changing data type, d type. Okay, so changing data type. Of course, lines here and lines here, because they're just single line queries and I already used my semicolon. I'm keeping them together so I can know that these are all my alter query. The same way I'm keeping my select together, and I'm only keeping them together because of the view. Here I would rather keep them separate so that they are seen as different queries. Alright, so for example, if I have another update, it will not make sense for me to do it this way, right? Because the update is long, so I'd rather put space like this, then have another update. You get, just make things look clean. Now the next thing is we have rename table, renaming column. Now we want to change the data type. However, the word column here is optional. I can decide to remove it. So whether I put it or not, it doesn't matter. So in the first time we'll put it. So you see, so if I run this, alter successful, I run this again, I bring this up, you can see now from integer it is now character. Okay, so bring it down. Now if I want to change it back to integer, because I want to keep it on integer, I'll just do int again, or I type int in full. Now this time I'm removing column, just so you know that it is optional. Okay, I'll run it. Now this is a very interesting thing, and it says, wait, you're trying to do something. Don't worry, it's not because of the column that we removed. Okay, so we're trying to do something, but I cannot do it automatically. It says column. Get used to reading the error message. It's not a big deal. Be happy when you see it. Sometimes it will run without error and you're still not getting what you want. That is more dangerous. So error says column ID, that means the ID column you're talking about cannot be automatically changed or cast into the integer type. So it says you might need to specify, that means you might need to force it or be strict about it. So what do? We just copy this part without the quotes, copy it and include it in our query. So but before I do that, let me undo this. Okay, so we see what it was before and what it is now. So changing back, just put it that way, changing back from character to integer. Okay, now must we type quotes? Must we have the comment in front before it works? Oh, changing, really changing. My changing so changed. Okay, so must we have the comments in front before it runs? No, the comment is just for you to know the difference between the query we're writing. It is for you. For the one writing personally and working on a project, I won't put all of this. You should not bastardize your query with comments everywhere. Okay, so now this is what we want to do. What we said, column is not necessary, it's not important. Then want to change back from character to integer, but the first time we run it, it's saying no, you can't do it automatically. So what do? We just copy this. This is what we should have done directly, but you will not know why I'm adding it. So you're saying it directly now, and then we'll add it. So we are saying use it, we're typing it, right? If you're familiar with some programming language, you know what we casting from one data type to another. So we're changing it, we're saying, yeah, we know what we're doing. This is the first use. Change it from ID, change this ID to what? An integer from character. Again, let me show you that it is currently in character. See, character of 5. But this time, I want to change it back to an integer. So I'll run this, and this time it is successful. See, because we had a using. So if a data type is proving stubborn, just add using, but be sure you want to do that first. Then the column name, double full colon, then the data type you want to change it to. Now let me run this again, and if we go back up, now it's now on integer. Now you see how to what? Alter data type. And the last thing we want to see is adding column and dropping column. Okay, adding column and dropping column. I'll show you syntax for adding column and dropping column. So it says alter table, dbs, alter. Now we just use the word add. Like I said, you can use column, but it's optional. So we can say gender. Of course, gender column is very relevant to this table, and we'll still remove it. And we're saying the data type should be, let's say, character of 6. So adding new column gender. So if I run this, it's done successfully. If I run select all again, and I scroll up, hold on, alter table dbs add gender. Okay, run that again. Let me run this, exactly this. Okay, alter successful. Run this again. Good. Now you see we have gender. Of course, it will be null for now. All is on. It's all empty. That's how we had new column. And don't forget, for any new column you had, it goes to the end of your table, which makes sense. Same way when we had a new record, it goes to the bottom of our table. So the next thing we want to do, now is to drop the column. So how do we drop it? Copy the same query, and then we use the word drop. Now, when we are deleting something or we're taking it out, we do not need to add the data type. It doesn't care. Okay, so this is how we delete the data type. It does not care. So we're saying alter table, this particular table, drop the gender column. And be careful when you use it, because it's going to take out, if I do drop db now, it's going to take out all of this entire column. Okay, so be careful how you use it. So we want to drop this. I'll just say drop and I run it. Alter table successful. If I run dbs again, I'm using the shortcut, that's why I'm not going up there. Alt F5. Okay, so I've run this again. Now you see that it's gone. Okay, so let me add comments. I intentionally did not add comments initially, so you know it runs without comments. So removing columns. Now do not forget that alter is a DDL. Now since alter is a DDL, data definition, it alters or it changes the structure. So far we changed the column name, add a new column, remove a column, change data type. It's still the structure. It has nothing to do with what is inside. Do you get that? So but update is for what is inside. To delete something that is inside the table, we use delete. But to take out a column, we use drop. So drop is for column, delete is for a record or a row. Alter is for columns. Alter is for column or are for columns, while update is for row or records. So keep that in mind. Very, very important and useful. And the last thing you can do is also what? To add constraints. You can add what? Constraints. So let's just say add constraints. For example, we want to add primary key to a column. So add constraint. That's how it's spelled, right? Yeah, I believe so. Let me put space. So for adding constraints, since we have different constraints that we'll likely add, and we will not be going through all of them, I'll just give you the syntax. Okay, so it will be alter table, the table name first, the table name, then you do add constraint. Okay, so you know it's a constraint, and this time you should add a constraint. You know, earlier when we did add for a column, I said column is optional, but for constraints you need to put it so that I can know what you're adding. So add constraint, then your constraint name, then your constraint definition, then your constraint definition, or define constraint definition. All right, so here let me take this out, add constraint. So let's give you an example of, let's say, primary key, so you see what it looks like in reality. All right, Control C, Control V. Now this will be DBS, and then we'll say we want to add a constraint. So we'll say this will be a primary key, and then we'll say primary key. Then we'll put in bracket. So let's say we want to make this guy the DB ID, which is majorly the ID. Let me show you quickly. On F5, so this ID on the database itself, the primary key. So we'll say ID, then we'll delete the rest. So alter table DBs, add constraints. So say it will be it's good to see ID primary key, or can say, so that we know from the table where it is coming from, DB's ID, then we'll say primary key. Okay, DB ID primary key. Okay, then of course, as usual, Alt F5, run this, and it says alter successful. Then we'll run this again, and what we'll see, it is now a primary key, PK, and this can help us avoid error. And yes, this is where we'll stop for today. You've gotten so much value from this. Give it a like, share with someone, subscribe to make sure you get the next video when it's out. And here, what did we cover? Normalization, which we'll do fully again. We created, done. Selected, done. Alter, we covered basically almost all the other, if not all. Yeah, I think all. Altered, we updated, right? Not once. And delete is what I showed you in the last one. So just to show you for this case, we'll take out one of the DBs, or two of them. So let's say we want to take out the Oracle DB. So ID of 5. How do we do that? We just do a delete. Of course, we'll still practice it more. Delete from DBs. Delete from DBs where ID equals 5. Run it. Oh, BDs, that's an error. DBs, run it, and it's successful. And if we run this again, so you see, we don't have the ID of 5 again. We don't have Oracle DB anymore. It's gone completely. And yes, let's bring us to the end of this particular one. So you might want to save this. You might want to save your query. In the next query, I will work on a blank slate completely. Okay, like I said, the query is just for reference purposes. And yes, you'll be getting something to do, an exercise to do for yourself. So do well to stay in touch, keep practicing. I'll see you in the next one.